more samples, right? So we can draw circles, ellipses, marks, and images. We've actually already tried to construct some images in previous laboratory exercise last week. I am not going to continue with this because you can now realize that these circles, ellipses, and other types of user primitives derive themselves from shape, and this makes it possible to construct them, configure them, define what kind of properties they should have with respect to the colors, fill options, and so forth. And that makes um, makes them all uniform because they are all deriving from the shape class, and therefore they can be attached to the window. So I'm not going to go over these samples on my own. I would encourage that you try it on your own. You see how simple it is to just like copy and paste examples, make sure that the names agree correctly. Occasionally, we have to use namespace names to avoid collisions with other components in Windows. But rather than that, it's a pretty straightforward approach to both examine the classes that we have and see their implementation, and also use them and try to experiment with all the properties, with constructor parameters, and so forth. So there's an example of an image. Again, I'll just let you play with this sample on your own. What is more interesting is, to me, at least to me today, is to discuss and observe the presence of a text. So using like a little text fragment or text label inside of some sort of graphical display is also a very interesting possibility, because we can annotate and we can just print information and make information visible on the screen. So this is an interesting primitive. So the text here, let's take a look at the sample. Okay, and this is a sample where we construct a text. Let me just try my own type of text. So what I need to do is I'll do it right at the top of this exercise. As soon as the window is constructed, what I want to do is, you can see that what I need to do is I can say text. I'll separate a little bit. Text, I'll call it label. And constructor for text primitive requires point where this text should be located. So let me try something simple like 100 like this. That would be my location. Remember, these pixels are relevant to the top left corner of the visible window. And then we simply provide the text. And we say GUI demo, right? GUI demo. So we just print some kind of text here. So create this text, and of course, just like everything else, because it's another form of the primitives, I need to say that this label, I need to attach it to the window. Let's first just run this. So build, run. Let me see. Yeah. Apparently, again, the color is very faint, like faint white color. So I need to adjust the default color to make it easier to recognize. 1 second. So we'll just like we did with everything else. So we'll just set the color. Label set color, very good, right? And yeah, and let's move this a little bit above the rectangle because I see that, I mean, sorry, the polygon, because I see that the polygon is located here. So let's actually no, let's keep it the way it is. That's fine. So right here, you see that our polygon. So this is where I now just constructed this text primitive named label, and it contains this text, and it's located at the location 100, 100 from the top left corner of the visible window. And at this stage, what happens is like using some kind of default font and font size. And I was able to change the color so that it became easier to see. But here's something interesting to note about text. So the way it's organized is that we do not specify its width and height. So its width and height is actually defined by the font itself. Depending how many characters we use, it will be getting wider and wider and wider. So for instance, if let's just cycle through this. If I repeat this a few more times, like this, and we run it again, of course, the length or width of this text is completely defined by its content. We only specify the starting point where this text should be originally placed. So both width and height are like the height and width are depending on the font style and the size of the font. But something else to observe right here is that, and let me try another. So this is my work with the label, and this is how it appears to be. And now just something else to show you or note is that when we place this text demo, this is what I've used, right? So those were uppercase characters. Now, so this is like the physical, like real estate. Let me actually resize this, just for the sake of our demonstration, like resize it a little bit. Okay. And of course, it's using its own rectangle where all this text fits, right? So it's just like this is an imaginary rectangle where all this text is fitting. But an interesting observation that this location 100, 100, like the starting point where to place this text on the screen, is specifying the point right here. This is this point on the screen. This is the location of 100, 100. Okay, so this is the location on the screen where what 100 and 100 is specified. See how I said point 100, 100? So basically, when the text position is used, it's sort of like its own like a y coordinate and x coordinate are going in these directions, right? So this is where this is like an x and y. So for the text itself, right? So this would be like a version of a y coordinate and the x coordinate for the text itself. And it's using the initial point that we specify when we construct, I constructed my label, as an origin of the system of coordinate, and it builds itself in the in the conventional y coordinate direction and conventional x coordinate direction. So just be aware of it, that this specific point that you use is not it's not here. Okay, let's just switch this. So it's not here. No, it's not here. This is wrong, right? The point is right here, in the left lower corner of the space occupied by the text. Just wanted to make sure that we highlight this. Of course, when you're building your own, graphical user interface from these very primitive objects, and that's what you have to do if you want to design your own version of a list or text box or some other sophisticated gadget, and it uses text with combination of other controls. Just be aware that this is where the starting point is just this lower left corner of the text. Whereas, if I was using a rectangle class, right? So if I want to place a, let me just remove this, right? If I wanted to draw like a red rectangle around this, if I wanted to draw a rectangle around my text like this, right? Its top left corner would be actually right here. So an interesting difference between text primitive and a primitive such as a in fact, let's try to demonstrate this. Okay, so let's construct a rectangle that would sort of like wrap itself around this label. How could we do it? Well, we have this rectangle primitive that we were already demonstrating. So let's see. So I'm thinking that if I want to wrap a rectangle around this, so I need to I really don't know what is the height of this font, the default font that I'm using, but I would guess that maybe 20 pixels would be enough. So I'd say, for example, if I say 100 and the width is, I don't know, 500, and so this is width and height. So let me have height like 30, and let's just define those variables. rectangle width I will define as 500. For instance, I'm assuming that the width of the rectangle should be 500 pixels. Remember, this is pixels in 2D world, and rectangle height let's say will be like 30 pixels. So with this in mind, this is, I'm assuming, is the rectangle height where we specified. This is the rectangle width where we have to specify it right here. And this is the starting point. Okay, so we can say that we can construct this point as an individual object. We can say point 100 100 and give it a name. I will say label origin, okay, and construct it like this as an individual point. Then use this named point as label origin, and then with respect to the label origin, I may say that if I want to use this label origin right here, then I need to make adjustment to it. I think I should be able to make adjustments with, or rather, just let's just use point that uses label origin dot x and label origin dot y, x and y, without any modification for now. And I will also set color for this rectangle to be black, right? So this is a rectangle. In fact, let me just keep the polygon and remove all other parts right now, like this. Okay, so what I'm constructing is just create a little bit more space over here. So I construct my label. Create label. Okay, so this is where I create the label. Here I say create the rectangle. And obviously create the polygon. Okay, so of course I need to remember to attach everything. So if I construct the rectangle, name the rectangle, I'm not going to call it 0, 0. I'll just call it rect, and here we use it to attach it. Let me try this, right? Just with all of these definitions. Let me just close the prior version of this application. Okay. Let's just construct everything and run. Oh, I actually misplaced the height and width, so you can see it stretches down like that. So let's switch this around. So it needs to be width first and then height. That makes sense, like corresponding to X and Y axis. Okay, so this is the way it looks like right now. You see, when I just used the origin of x and y to construct my rectangle, it kind of stretches itself right below the text. So my original version of the rectangle, which I'm planning to sort of like build around my text, my initial try to create it, it looks like this, right? So this is where it gets constructed right below. So in order to build it around my text like this, what I need to change is that I need to relocate it to above x, and therefore I need to subtract from x coordinate of the rectangle basically the label height, right? Label height, and this is where I would have to guess what it is right now. I don't know what it is, but I'm assuming that maybe label height is like the same as my rectangle height. How about this? Okay, so something like that. If I build it, so hopefully it'll push my rectangle up. So, oh, yeah, I just again, this should apply not to x, is to the y coordinate. Sorry about that. Yeah, I just realized that. Right. So here, so this is my first version of like using my rectangle uh, to wrap around the text, and you see that it's like right on the edge of my text, right down below over here. So if I want to if I want this to be like a little bit nicer, what I need to do is that I also need to increase the height a little bit, right? So just like I can say that int uh, pixels below label, right? So just another component that I need to account for. Let's say I want to use 10 pixels. So then I can add this here to the rectangle height. Okay, so something like that. So hopefully if that makes the right adjustments and all together is the right recipe, then here it is, right? So just possibly maybe acceptable version of what I'm trying to do. Basically, wrap a rectangle around my text like this. Okay, so you see that it all takes a little bit of thinking and deciding how to place everything if you want to really customize some sort of display and make it all reasonable and the way you should you should see it in the final version. So just wanted you to realize how some of these things need to be addressed, and everything is taking some time. And of course, I have so many different variables that I've now created. So perhaps some of it can be simplified and optimized away. I can combine them together. But my initial demonstration was that these are all parts that may be involved in computing the location of this rectangle in order to be able to place it somewhere where you like it and make all possible adjustments for that. So just a demo of, like, in terms of positioning, and I think that it would be more realistic to find out what is the current font and what its size, and derive the label height from the size of the font itself. What I'm talking about here is this size right here. I mean, basically, the the actual height of the font, this height right here, should be derived from the font that I'm currently using, and not just like guessing how many pixels it is. So that's just another layer of what we could improve on and what we could add to this. So if we wanted to do it, then we would have to probably search for the possibilities of interrogate the font that we currently have. And I recall that in our demo, somewhere we were talking about the font. Let me see if there was some kind of object that was specifying the font. Let's just search for font. Yes, so the font is apparently defined right here. Okay, so we have the font, and in this font we really yeah, I don't see in at least in this interface, I don't see font is just an int, like an encoding of the font. But I mean, it remains to be investigated. How would you adjust the font size? What are possibilities to make font size adjustments right here? Font, set font. Yeah. Oh, okay. So with the lines, there is a way to obtain font size right here. So we could play with this later on. So this sort of concludes our current coverage of Lab 3, and we're getting pretty close to the ending of this Lab 3. I just wanted to show you the impact that the text label could make on everything else that you do in terms of positioning. And so your homework for next Monday would be to take a look at the current assignment, which is our final project. Let me just scroll all the way to the top, right? Just read the description of the final project, and we will work on this final project next week. This will be our final presentation and final, and it will be due before the end of the semester. So that concludes our presentation today.